Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Pamela Taylor, Senior Vice President, Chief Branding and Communications Officer for Share Our Strength. I know this has been a wonderful, wonderful summit, and we are going to keep that going today with a great conversation ahead. Before we get started, I'd like to cover off on just a couple of housekeeping issues and then a couple of announcements. So one, this session is being recorded. There is language interpretation that will be provided. The information is located in the attendance hub and will be added to the chat. Finally, if you have any questions for our panelists, please enter them in the Q&A box to be answered at the end of the session. So with that, I'd like to make a couple of acknowledgements. There are 107 historically Black colleges and universities across the country. And for those of you who have or are attending an HBCU, you know that there is an incredible love and sense of family across all of us and all of the organizations. But with that, I want to give a special shout out to all of the HBCU alums and students who are joining us today. There is a special shout out that I must give to any Hamptonians that are out there, as I am a very proud alum. Finally, if there's anyone out there from North Carolina A&T, please don't beat us next week at homecoming. That would not be good for us. All right, now on to the business at hand. We have a wonderful panel today, and I'd like to begin by having each panelist introduce themselves, their name, the role, and the organization school that they represent. Let's start with Lamont.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lamont Moorhead. I attend Miles College, and I'm a No Kid Hungry ambassador.
Oh, sorry, Zella. I was muted.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zella Palmer. I'm the director and chair of the Dillard University Ray Charles Program in African American Material Culture here in New Orleans, Louisiana.
And Lakeisha.
Good afternoon. I'm Lakeisha Thomas. I'm the lead single stop coordinator for Hines Community College in Mississippi.
Very good. Welcome to all of our panelists for today. And again, I'm Pamela Taylor with Share Our Strength, the organization behind the No Kid Hungry campaign. And we love doing this event with Save the Children. So let's get into today's conversation. All right. So first, today's topic is cultivating education and rural communities, exploring the intersection of HBCUs and food insecurity. And I'd like to start with a general question for all of our panelists today. The question is, are there personal stories that you have to share that illustrate how food insecurity can hinder students' ability to thrive in their academic performance? And I'd like to start that question with Lakeisha.
Yes, there are personal stories where we have experience with some students that experience food insecurities because our college is the largest in the state of Mississippi, and we have 2 residential campuses and 4 commuter campuses. And with those campuses, especially with commuter, they don't have a dormitory meal plan, and they are unable to have food where they are at school, all day. They have to have access to the vending machines. So food insecurities are present on those campuses. Due to that, not having, a campus grill, campus cafeteria, and also that's a big hit in their pocket for expense in some cases where we have some students that are not working. So we do have some big food insecurities there, along with residential campuses where the students with the meal plan, they have insecurities for the timing with the meal plan. If they miss breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we have seen some food insecurities on our campuses.
For sure. Thank you for that, Lakeisha. Zella, I'd like to come to you next, sharing personal stories that you might have or you've witnessed with students on your campus.
Sure, thank you. And in unison with Lakeisha, our cafeteria is open for limited hours. So we do have students who struggle with campus hunger, either they're commuter students or even in the dorms. And we live in a food apartheid area in our neighborhood, Gentilly. We only have about 3 grocery stores and many fast food restaurants. So if a student doesn't have access to a car or doesn't have the access for Uber or bus transportation, it makes it very difficult for them to access healthy foods.
Yeah, understood. Yes, thank you for that. And Lamont, as our student panelists, I know you play a dual role as a student and a parent, which we know is true for so many students at HBCUs across the country. Could you share a little bit about your experience as a student and a parent with and maybe some of your classmates with food insecurity?
So, Miles College in particular is in a food desert. So when it comes to HBCUs and our campuses, depending on where your HBCU is located, the food options are limited. So with the cafeteria hours being at various times, the latest that it'll be open is 7 o'clock. So a lot of our students are extracurricular students, they're in organizations, so their days really don't end till around 9 o'clock, maybe 10 at the latest. So you got them going through their student days and on top of their extracurricular days, and they're just all worn out with nothing to eat after a certain amount of time out of the day. So when it's time to get up for those 8 o'clock classes, it's kind of hard for them to do so. And a lot of people will say it's because of certain things, but really it comes back around to not having the proper nutrients in their bodies to restore their energies overnight, to have the will and the energy to get up at 8 a.m. and go to their class or whatnot like that. And just going through the day-to-day life as a college student is hard in itself. And just not knowing what background each student comes from, you just never know what they already was facing coming to college. So, and my personal experience with it it's been kind of challenging. Also, just being a parent away from my child. So it's really taught me a lot. It's actually keeping me humble and hungry in the physical sense and the emotional and mental sense as well, because it makes me grind to keep going for everything that I'm trying to go for. And I think I'm being a great example to my fellow peers, because a lot of them look up to me in the things that I'm accomplishing and trying to implement in our college as well. So it's just a tidbit, not to go too deep into it.
No, we love it. We love it. In fact, I just recently saw an ad about students who are also parents, and the tagline at the close of the ad was, "When you graduate, they graduate." So I understand your extra motivation, Lamont, for what you're doing is not just for you, but it's for the generation that you are currently raising and coming up right behind you. And I know that is true for so many students and adults. So Zella, I'd like to come back to you with a question similar to where Lamont started going, and I would like to have you build on this. How do cultural differences and diverse backgrounds among HBCU students impact their access to food? And what strategies can be implemented to ensure culturally sensitive and inclusive solutions to food insecurity?
Well, a lot of our students are first generation students. So with that comes, different insecurities, and particularly with hunger on campuses. When we look at students, parents sending their children to college. They try to do their best to make sure they're equipped and ready, but at the same time, it becomes very expensive. So we see dropout rates across the country of students dropping out in college and having to work because they need to feed themselves. So, and in our situation, we have students from all backgrounds. We have students who are first generation students. We have students from Louisiana, all the way from California, from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different cultures. So depending on where they're from determines what kind of food they want to eat. And, we have a food pantry that we're launching actually next week. And it's interesting when we put out a survey of what student needs are, and it's fascinating to find out, just different backgrounds and different ideas that they have on what they want. And that the bottom line is they want healthy food and they want it to be accessible for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's so important for the Black community specifically. We are not monolithic, and there are very unique cultural differences that come into account, especially for a university like Dillard, where you said you've got students from Louisiana to California, and I'm sure other places. And one thing that you feel when you're away from home is you want a sense of home sometimes. And food often reminds us of home. So I can understand how important that is and what a challenge that can be at times. So, Lakeisha, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about cultural differences. And you mentioned this in your opening. So with Hines Community College, being the largest community college in Mississippi with 6 campuses, 2 of them being residential, and then you have 4 commuter campuses. Talk about what some of those challenges are, not only for the university, for the community college, but also for the students when it comes to traversing back and forth, how the community college addresses such a span of campuses, and how you all address food insecurity.
Well, one thing in particular, I know one of our biggest, besides food insecurities, one of our biggest barriers that we have is transportation for students. The student can be on one of the residential campuses, but their program of study that they may be interested in may be on a commuter campus. And so my program, Single Stop, we serve those students with those barriers for transportation. So if we have a student that wants to attend a certain campus, such as our Jackson campus, we do assist with those barriers and provide JTRAN bus passes for those students. With Utica, which is our HBCU campus, is totally rural. And so with that barrier, they do have transportation where they have a Hines bus that is able to pick up students from the surrounding areas. And so we work, my team and I, we work collaboratively with the transportation department if there are any students that has a barrier that with that transportation that needs to be brought in from the metropolitan area to the bus pickup location to be taken to the rural area. And then we also work with another third party agency that provides rural transportation throughout Hines County. So we are able to assist students with those particular barriers, especially for our campuses, and also with other county agencies that has transportation assistance.
Got it. So I'm gonna double click on that question for you, Lakeisha, okay, because transportation is such a key factor in rural communities, in what we call food deserts, food apartheid communities, also for access to getting the food that students need. In the example that Lamont gave, where you've got students who are involved in extracurricular activities after the academic day. Do students have access to either financial resources or transportation that will take them to a local grocery store, supermarket, when the campus, cafeteria or, the grill or the student union. Whenever I say grill, I think of my days watching A Different World, because everybody ate grill with Mr. Gaines. But is that an option for students? Is that something that the university has looked into providing as an additional benefit in order to increase food access and close some of those food insecurity gaps?
My team and I, we have looked at that because one of our biggest mission to serve the Hines students in our program with Single Stop is to assist students and hear their perspectives and hear what their barriers are, so we can take it to to the leadership team and say, hey, we have so many students that has these type of barriers. We have reached out to some other third party transportation for us, like the Mississippi Department of Transportation. But of course, the issue has been funding. But we have reached out to them, and then also is the timing that the students would need to be taken. Some of them have set timing where they cut off transportation at 6 p.m. And we know some students, of course, will need to travel later than that. But we've tried to, eliminate especially the food insecurities, because we do have food pantries on our campuses. So we do try to alleviate some of those food insecurities that way, but also with the transportation as well.
Got it. Understood. And there are so many layers when it comes to looking for extra supports outside of the community college space in order to address some of the challenges and the barriers that students face. Lamont, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit more about what you just described. And I would like to also keep this in the vein of non-traditional students who may be parents that, are not as young as you, but older parents, older adults that we know have come back to go on to receive and obtain higher degrees of education. What are some of the improvements that are needed to better meet what students in particular of differing backgrounds and differing experiences need, or that the universities and colleges can help with?
Well, I thank you for the compliment, but I feel like I'm a little older than most on my campus.
I just
But
mentioned A Different World. You are younger than me, so I appreciate that, though. You are youthful.
thank you. So, just my experience recently, just being in college for the first time and being a non-traditional student, I would say that institutions, universities, colleges should be more intentional when a student is enrolling. I think um, the more we cover at the beginning of a student's experience would allow us to be more intentional with the decision-making process throughout a student's matriculation at an institution. Most non-traditional students, you wouldn't know that they had X amount of kids, maybe a full-time job, but they still trying to come to class during the afternoon or things like that, or they may have to bring a child with them to school. So I guess it is just being understanding of what a non-traditional student may have, and being able to accommodate in some type of way, which will also help build more relationships within the communities. I think that most colleges may have daycares close that allow institutions to be more involved in their communities in that way. So it's many a ways to help these type of students out. It's just being in the know. I think most institutions are not in the know of to be able to help these students out. But I think if we be more intentional about, okay, yes, the student is enrolling, yes, the student is not a traditional student, but what else does this student come with, and what can we help them with overall, since we are paying to be in college?
That's
You
right.
know? So, yeah.
That's right. That's right. I think you raise a really good point, which is at the beginning of the process, whether that be the enrollment process or even the application process, the more colleges and universities can learn about their student body and their needs. So, those that are student parents or, adults that are working and going to school, those who are dependent on alternate modes of transportation, the more colleges and universities know that up front, I think it would be helpful in how they can prepare and address what those challenges and barriers might be by maybe extending one cafeteria's hours or having, a on-campus food pantry or little, bodega or market where students can continue to get nourishment, nutritious nourishment, healthy nourishment after traditional hours or before they go to band practice or whatever extracurricular activities there are. I think that's a wonderful recommendation and suggestion. And with that, Zella, I'd like to ask you, what are some of the policy gaps or systemic issues that contribute to food insecurity within HBCUs and the community?
Well, just thinking about, where sometimes our universities are located, we're normally in a food apartheid area or, in a crime-ridden area. And, when we send our students out, we want them to be safe. We don't want them to go to the fast food restaurant or Walmart and it's in a violent area, right? And then even when we think about what our students have available to them, a lot of them can't afford meal plans. And sometimes their parents, aren't able to support them. And, when we also think about HBCUs, not only we're dealing with first generation students, we also have students who come from other countries as well. We had one student in particular who, was from another country, and we had to do a lot to make sure that he could, survive on campus. So, we deal with a lot of campus, hunger, and we do our best to make sure that we provide adequate food, whether with working with Sodexo, who is our partner, the cafeteria, but also, us launching this food pantry is not only about just launching a regular type of food pantry, but like you said, nutritious food, not just canned food, but actually nutritious food, and working with local Black farmers, because we also understand that, we have to have this kind of, passing of community and what our president, Dr. Rochelle Ford, calls a communiversity.
Mm. I love that. I'm going to add that to my vocabulary, a communiversity. That is fantastic. I'm going to go a little off script here because I think you just mentioned something that's really important, Zella, which is organizations and corporations and businesses that provide food to campuses like Sodexo, like Aramark. But the importance of also partnering with our Black farmers and with local community suppliers, going to think about supplier diversity. Is that something that Dillard has spent some time really trying to build up and build out? Or is that something that's a relatively new initiative for the university?
Absolutely. We have been working with Black farmers locally for quite some time, but we are strengthening it and, rolling out more programming to really work with Black farmers, and not only Black farmers, but Black chefs, and we have plenty of student chefs on campus. So we want to highlight them as well, because, we know the students are in their dorms cooking and selling plates. If we all went to universities before, so we want to support them and highlight them, but also make sure that these students are getting nutritious food, and that we're also helping our athletes and those who are, representing the university to making sure that they have nutritious meals as well. Even if, our cafeteria closes early. We want to make sure that we lower obesity rates on campus and all of the other kinds of issues that students go through. It's not cute in any American university that students, have a subsistence of ramen noodles and pizza. We have to change that culture.
100%, 100%. And, of course, I'm going to have to give another different world reference. Y'all remember when Lena caught the dorm on fire by making gumbo in her room and selling it for 50 cents a bowl? Those are real moments. Those are very real moments. I'd like to now come back to Lakeisha with what is essential to focus on in creating some sustainable solutions that go beyond short-term interventions. I know you mentioned single stop, and I just gave you a question, but I'm going to give you another question. So now you're going to answer two questions. So let me first ask you to explain a little bit more about single stop, and then I'll re-ask the first question.
Okay, so Single Stop, we are a program that is through Single Stop USA. The goal of Single Stop USA and the mission that they have been since they've started was to end poverty. And so what we do is to provide support services for our currently enrolled students. So we serve basically as the social workers on the college level. My team and I, we are all master level social workers. And so we seek out all resources for students for rental assistance, utility assistance, food insecurities. We help them apply for SNAP benefits. We help them locate additional funding for school. We connect them to free and sliding scale medical and dental services, domestic violence referrals, mental health referrals. We do focus on the student on a holistic level. And just as Lamont said, I think some of those barriers could be secured if it's approached at the beginning during enrollment. I think that will be a good offset of preventing some of those barriers, or seeing where I would say where the institution and organization can pick up and try to help the students with the barriers.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that sounds like a wonderful, holistic, like you said, holistic wellness program for students. So with that, and I'm not sure, so the question that I asked was about sustainable solutions that go beyond short-term interventions. I'm not sure if you would consider single stop a short-term or long-term intervention, but are there other interventions that the Hines Community College environment is considering or working on or piloting at this time?
I do know that they reach out to and they work a lot with the legislator, and especially with our workforce, and getting because we know that the trending now with education is typically this culture does not want to attend for a year. They want to get in and get out. And so we have been driving our workforce. We've been trying to teach them the skills that they need to secure employment. And we've been very successful, especially, for as like with welding. We have a maritime shipping deck program that's coming, and it's fast track. They come in 1 week and it prepares them how to work on a ship. And so I think some of those can help the students in the long run for as obtaining long-term employment, to where we won't have a high turnover, where in the past we've had people that have obtained a associate's degree and move on to bachelor's degree, and they have been unable to find employment. And so I think that is a plus, that we actually drive the workforce piece at our institution.
Yes, that's excellent. I mean, look, the idea of receiving higher education is to enter the workforce and try to establish some economic stability and mobility, so that students, as they enter their adult years and begin their own families, if that's the path that they're on, are not repeating a cycle of food insecurity and poverty. So the workforce development component is really the key underpinning to why we're having this conversation, and why hopefully in years to come, this conversation will be less and less necessary. Lamont, I'd like to come back to you. You have been sharing some really great ideas that you have based on your personal experience. And in fact, I think you should be looking for a job in the administration, quite honestly, at your university, but we'll talk about that offline. What I would like to ask you, though, is how can schools involve students in more of the decision-making processes that will lead to more effective solutions in addressing where there are food insecurities or access gaps for students? I would love to hear you talk a little bit about some of those ideas.
Okay, so I would also just piggyback off of what I was saying earlier, was that beginning process, if you start there, you already have a roundabout percentage of what needs to be addressed. Okay, and then once the student comes in, it's not like their problems go away. What they do is they start creating organizations, they get in clubs that revolves around the issues that they have. My particular,
I'm sorry, Lamont, this is the interpreter. Apparently your connection is not enough. We're getting a lot of static, and unfortunately what you're saying is really impossible to understand. Are you able to change something there?
Why don't we let Lamont see if he can get a stronger connection so that we aren't missing anything in the interpretation. And I'll come back to you in just a moment so that you can finish your answer. And while we do that, or while Lamont works on that, I want to go to all of the panelists in just a moment, but I'm going to start with Lakeisha. So one of the things that we've been talking about throughout this conversation is, and not just with these three colleges and universities, as I mentioned in the opening, there are 107 HBCUs across the country. And one thing we know is HBCUs are so pinnacle to the community at large. It's not just the campus environment. It's not just the student body. The schools are so connected to their communities. And one of the things that we've touched on, but I would love to hear more about that, is how can HBCUs either involve the community in some of the solutions or work with the community for those residents in the community who aren't students, but may be facing food insecurity or live in areas that are food deserts or food apartheid. What roles, and Lakeisha, I want to start with you because I know you all have multiple campuses. What role are you all playing in Mississippi to help the community and the residents at large?
I believe with working with Mississippi Food Network, looking at the rural areas, we have several local churches and organizations that provide drive-through food boxes. And those are for elderly individuals, disabled individuals. There's still Meals on Wheels, for those residents who qualify for those. But I think for as a community college level and a HBCU level, I believe just developing and keeping the village mentality. I think in the past, in HBCUs, that it was a village, it was a connection. It was, if you have a bag of flour, your neighbor has a bag of flour, So I think it's just obtaining the village mentality. Once again, I think that we have shifted from the importance of community and unity in our community, and that serves a lot, when it comes to food insecurities. I think a lot of individuals may be receiving public assistance, or I think when some of the recipients of public assistance may be thinking, hey, this is for me and my household, instead of thinking, let me cook up a big, huge dinner and I know my kids wouldn't eat it, or I know we have leftovers, and then thinking of on the community level and the community mindset, let me take the leftovers to the homeless. Let me see if it's someone down at the corner store that just need, a sandwich or something like that. I think that is one of the biggest things in our community that we can look into.
Very good. Yes, the village concept is so pervasive in many cultures, and particularly the Black culture. Like you said, what the neighbor has, I got, you got, we all got, right? And if not, then we'll just meet each other down at the church for the fish fry. So Zella, I'd like to come to you with that question, same question, which is, because the role that the University Dillard plays in the community, are there initiatives that you all are doing or thinking about in how to help the community residents who are not students, or in the reverse, are there ways that the community are helping students?
Absolutely. So our director of community relations, Nick Harris, who's been at Dillard University for over 20 years, he has planted garden boxes throughout the city. He's worked with elderly, similar to Lakeisha's university. We have Meals on Wheels program. We've done, festivals on campus. So we're always working and part of that village. And just the city of New Orleans in general has been always a city of culture, and we're one big gumbo. So we're always sharing food. That's part of our culture, and we just want to make sure that Dillard continues with that kind of legacy. And another thing that we're working on right now is our greenhouse has been laying dormant on campus for quite some time. So we're working with community partners to revitalize our greenhouse and make it an educational center, so that our, adjoining departments, our food studies, biology, botany, environmental sciences, physics, et cetera, can use our greenhouse. So it's not only a resource for the community, but it's also a resource for faculty and students, because we want to be an edible campus as much as Paul Quinn colleges in Dallas and other colleges, universities throughout the HBCU network.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. And you mentioned in a previous answer, and I wanted to come back to that before I go back to Lamont. I see that he's back on screen with us, but Zella, let me just come back to a question or a remark that you made to a previous question around working with Black farmers, but you also mentioned Black chefs. And for Share Our Strength and our No Kid Hungry campaign, the culinary and chef community has been so vitally important to us as champions of our work. And many chefs themselves as children faced food insecurity. And it's almost a way of how they got into the culinary business. They had to find ways to cook for themselves, or they had working parents that worked non-traditional hours. And so it was incumbent upon them as young folks to learn how to make dinner and, learn how to feed their siblings. This is for Zella, but Lakeisha, also for you. Do you have culinary and hospitality arts as a part of your curriculum, academic curriculum, your undergraduate and graduate programs? And is that another opportunity for workforce that you all are exploring for students? So Zella, I'll start with you. I'll come to Lakeisha, and then Lamont, give me a nod, my friend, if you think you're back in business. All right, I see you. I'll come to you in just a moment. Zella with you, Lakeisha, and then we're going to come back to Lamont's question.
Well, we're the only active HBCU with a food studies program. We don't have a culinary program. We're producing the next food policymakers, food entrepreneurs, food lawyers, food urban planners, et cetera. But for those students who are interested in the culinary arts, we make sure that we partner with local chefs so they can either stage or be mentored in their kitchens. So before they spend that amount of money on the culinary arts program, which it can be very costly, a culinary arts degree, we make sure that they're ready to attend culinary schools, and then we partner with culinary schools so they can actually attend and kind of fast track their program so they can work with, they've already experienced working with some of the top chefs in the city. And then, of course, we also have chefs that constantly come to Dillard. We have a robust programming that we invite local, national, and international chefs to conduct cooking demos and to break bread with our students. And a lot of our students love that part because then they're learning not only about history and a multidisciplinary curriculum, but they're able to actually cook with these chefs. So it's a huge plus for us. And, once again, it's nothing that hasn't been done already. When you look at the legacy and history of HBCUs, there were always kind of home economic programs or, all these kind of culinary programs that just didn't have a fancy term to it. But that was already part of our legacy.
Excellent, excellent. And food skills education is a big component of helping families move out of food insecurity situations at times, teaching how to put meals together, teaching how to shop for healthy ingredients and prepare meals for their family, whether it be on a budget or what have you. Lakeisha, just quickly for you, same question about your workforce development, and it's culinary or I'm sorry, Zella, tell me the name of your program again.
We are the Ray Charles Program in African American Material Culture, and you can also look us up under food studies for our 6 credited courses.
Excellent. So it hurt me to my heart a little bit to hear that you were the only HBCU with that. So I'm going to call some folks at Hampton, find out why we don't have that, but I'll come back to that offline. Lakeisha, for you, is that something that you all are focusing on within any of your campuses?
Yes, we do have culinary arts and hospitality, and hotel management is located on, the culinary is located on 3 of our campuses. Those are, 2 commuter and 1 residential, where culinary arts students are able to study culinary arts. It has been very successful. We do have a lot of students that enroll in culinary arts. We actually have 1 student that was enrolled in the culinary arts program on the Jackson campus. She graduated and she actually comes back and serves the college because now she's opened her own food truck. And so that's a good representation of the workforce. So she comes and she'll go to all 6 campuses if she has to, but she comes back and serves as one of our former graduates and represents well.
Excellent, excellent. I love hearing those comeback stories to the campus. So Lamont, you're my friend. It seems like you're back. Let me go back to the question that you were answering because I want to hear your good thoughts about where and how students can play a role in some of these decision-making processes for effective solutions with the schools and colleges and universities. So I know you were giving us some great information, but you were breaking up just a touch. So let's make sure your audio is stable now.
Okay, how do I sound?
Loud and clear, perfect. Love it.
Good. So as I was mentioning earlier, I want to say it starts at the beginning as well, but also as students matriculate, they find ways to be in organizations or start organizations that coexist with their passions or their needs. Just like recently, we just launched the Bear Corner store here at Miles College. It started from an idea from one of the organizations that I'm a part of, but we wasn't able to birth it. Somebody else was able to take the idea and birth it elsewhere, and we just playing advocacy and ambassadors for that organization. But with that being said, I think if institutions, administrators don't just look at a club as just being a club, but but actually dive into the purposes of many clubs, that they are finding a lot of answers to their problems within their students, and also allowing their student leaders to be in spaces where they think that we aren't needed. I've been privy to a lot of those spaces just being here at our college, which has allowed me to be as vocal as I am and be in spaces that I need to be to kind of push these ideas out. I was just in a conversation yesterday with a couple of professors and administrators on the committee board for food insecurities on our campus, and we're working on a couple of grants that we'll be able to study the food insecurities. So I'm excited about that. And just adding on to all the things that I've been able to start on top of the community garden that I started this summer. It's kind of ironic how it got started, but I'm blessed and thankful that I was able to be a part of it and spearheading it as well, which landed me where I'm at right now. So yeah, that's pretty much, that's without going into in depth.
Excellent, excellent. And as Lamont mentioned at the onset during our brief introductions, he is one of the No Kid Hungry campaign's youth ambassadors. And I'm sure you all now can understand and see why such great energy and so many wonderful ideas. I'm just keeping my eye on the time. I know we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure we're reserving time for any questions that might come in. And as I wait for someone to signal whether or not we have questions from our summit, excuse me, our summit participants, I am going to keep going with our conversation with our panelists, and just someone flag me if there's a question that comes in so I can make sure we reserve ample time to respond. To Zella, I'd like to talk a little bit about a topic that is front and center for so many, but in the Black community, we see super high rates of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and it unfortunately is starting to present in much younger aged folks. This used to be something that would come, kind of like in our later years, but unfortunately, due to high rates of overweight, obesity, et cetera, we're starting to see an earlier increase in these diet-related diseases. Are there programs that you all are doing at Dillard? And Lakeisha, Lamont, I'm going to also ask you the same question, to help students with some of their health and well-being around making sure the foods that they're consuming are not contributing to some of these health factors?
Well, that's where our food pantry comes along. We're not going to have a typical food pantry. Like I said, we're going to make sure that we work with Black farmers. We're also working with local chefs to curate meals and show students how to survive in their dorms. I think, we forget sometimes what it was like to be a college student at that time. And unfortunately, when we were college students, I feel like there were a lot more resources and people were constantly cooking and things of that nature. But with, some of our legal challenges that kind of stops us sometimes from doing things, or, having grandmas bring food to the campus and feed everybody, and we don't want liabilities and things of that nature, that keeps us from, being part of this village. So with our food pantry, not only are we working with local chefs and not only we're working with local farmers, but we're also working with professors. For example, Dr. Samantha Gerlach, who is our botany professor, we're hosting a plants as medicine workshops before students go home for Thanksgiving. We want to make sure that we also build up their immune system by teaching them how to make tinctures, how to use, local medicinal plants supplements that can help them to build up their immune system, and also not only their immune system, but, start helping them with, balancing out all of these toxins and all of these genetically modified foods that unfortunately has become part of the American food system. So if we can, make sure that we provide access for students to have more healthier foods, and also prepare them for the future to have restaurants, in those same fast food places that actually provide real food to our communities, then I think we'll be, in a better place. And we received a recent grant from the Mellon Foundation to look at Black and Indigenous foodways. So we're also working with people like Chef Johnny Rhodes out of Houston, Texas, who, has built these kind of mom and pop, grocery stores that actually are farm to table, where he provides these products to the neighborhood, to the third ward in Houston. So we want to work with people like that who are working on the ground to make sure that our corner stores actually turn into healthy corner stores.
Excellent. Thank you. Lakeisha, I'm going to come to you with that question. And then there's a couple of questions that have come to me in the chat. So I want to make sure with our remaining 10 minutes, we have a chance to address those. So just anything, Lakeisha, you all are doing around diet-related diseases that we're starting to see an increase in a younger population.
Far as I'm aware, I'm not familiar with any interventions that we have in place, but I do know that with us having the agriculture course program of study, that the students do get experience on farm, to experience, how to plant and learn different various things about planting and growing food. And so that is one plus that they can utilize and take long term in, growing healthy foods and things like that. And just like Zella said, with, the herbs and things like that, that they can learn, take up weight in their personal lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So ironically, the question that came through, one of the questions that came through in the chat was about if you all could share any examples of student-led initiatives to end hunger on campus. And Lamont, I'm going to come to you because you did touch on this in your previous answer, but if you'd like to just take a couple of minutes to maybe expound on some of the work that you've been leading and that you are doing, and any other student-led initiatives on campus. And then Zella and Lakeisha, I will ask you the same.
I will start back with the community garden that I started this summer with the produce that I've, harvest through the garden. I've been trying to get in contact with the personnel that's over our cafeteria services to allow them, a pipeline from our garden, and they'll be able to feed into and invest into the garden as well. So it'll be an open partnership to where they're using fresh produce out of our garden. Meanwhile, our students in our natural sciences and biology and majors, they'll be able to get hands-on experience in the garden as well. So when they go and get their master's or go into their fields, they already have hands-on experience that they can utilize as well. And then going back to our Bear Corner store, it's a great opportunity for our students to kind of be privy to starting stuff like that. Miss Akaya Piercy has done a wonderful job with getting the administrators' attention. She's been doing a great job of creating a committee amongst the administrators to actually hone in onto this. And I just recently got brought into the committee as of yesterday. So I'm excited for what the future holds for the Bear Corner store and our initiatives against the food insecurities on our campus.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. So we are at 3:53 with just 7 minutes left in this conversation that I myself am so enjoying and could carry on for another good little while, but I want to be respectful of time. And there's another question that came in through the chat. And I'm sorry that this question came in with 7 minutes left, because this is a heavy one, y'all, but it's a good one. So I am going to pose it to anyone who would like to answer it first. Here's the question. How would you all say your universities or colleges and in your work include racial equity to combat food insecurity and poverty in your communities? I'm not sure who wants to take that first, but again, let me just repeat that question because I do think it's an important one. How would you all say your universities or colleges and in your work include racial equity to combat food insecurity and poverty in your communities?
I would like to speak on the behalf of the resources for us with Single Stop. With us assisting students who qualify, our commuter students who are in career tech programs, we assist them in applying for SNAP benefits through the state of Mississippi. So some students come to school not even knowing that they qualify. And so I think that that is one way that we can go above and beyond for us, like with the cultural aspect. It can be, a single parent. It can be African-American student. It can be, a Mexican student of that sort. So we try to share those type of resources with those students, to go against those cultural diversity and differences.
Excellent. In fact, that was going to be one of my back pocket questions if we hadn't gotten such a rich one here at the very end about students and SNAP benefits. But Zella or Lamont, is there anything you'd like to add about racial equity work that you all are doing to address food insecurity and poverty within your communities?
Well, we also try to expose our children, our students to, just food culture in New Orleans as well. So we work with diverse chefs from all over. We have a program called Life After Dillard, a dining etiquette program. So, we work with Chef Meg Bigford, who is the executive chef over at Commander's Palace, and she comes to campus and she came to campus and hosted a dining etiquette course. And then we took our students to Commander's Palace. So we want to break bread with everyone in our city so that our students feel comfortable and they also understand that you can be a citizen and you can pull up to any table and feel comfortable and safe. And proper dining etiquette, whether it's in an African restaurant, an Asian restaurant, or, a mainstream quote unquote fine dining restaurant or our own restaurants.
That's right. That's right. And that's such an important component of racial equity, which is also understanding multiple cultures. And in such a culture-rich area like Louisiana, I know that probably goes a really long way. Lamont, anything that you'd like to add to that before I ask our very final question before we wrap up?
I would just add that before we can go outside of our institutions, I believe that our president likes to start within first. So we do a great job with paying attention to how diversified our campus is already and pouring into the cultures and the racial equity that we already have. We have people from Nigeria here. We have Hispanics are here. So our culture is very diverse. So I just like the fact that our student activities director always allow them to put on events that caters to their culture and allows everybody to expand their food palettes with whatever the Hispanics might cook, whatever the Nigerians might cook, even though we have a Louisiana boot club here and they always do like a crawfish boil event to allow everyone that's never had those type of foods to try those as well. So as I was saying about the committee, I do feel like that moving forward, we're going to be very intentional about including not just our campus, but the community as well. We do a good job of it right now, but it's always room for improvement. And I'm just excited for the future, honestly.
Well, I love that. In fact, I may have to scoot on down for the crawfish boil here soon. I know that's delicious. We are at 3:58, and I just want to first pause and thank Lakeisha and Zella and Lamont for sharing your time with us, the information about what you are doing in your individual colleges and universities and communities, and how important the role HBCUs play for students, for academic growth, for academic development, for workforce development. Ultimately, what we are all trying to accomplish is to end cycles of generational poverty and to ensure students have what they need going into the next phase of their lives, so that they don't have to apply for SNAP benefits and they don't have to worry about transportation to get to the closest market or grocery store or supermarket, so that they can purchase on their own the foods that their families like to eat. So this is such an important conversation. The work that HBCUs do all across the country is so very important. And as I started this conversation, I feel HBCUs are just so critical in the Black community, and also for many other races that you will see starting to join the HBCU families. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your time with us today. And we've been working on this conversation for quite some time. So I know it wasn't just today's hour, but the time that you've committed to us to get us to this afternoon. And for all of our friends who are participating in the Rural Summit with Save the Children and Share Our Strengths, No Kid Hungry campaign, thank you so much for your participation, your time, and your engagement. And with that, you all, it is 4:00 on the dot East Coast time. Thank you all. And I'm going to turn it over to the next host.